So, the last year countdown we did, 1983, I got a little back talk from the editor where he was saying it was kind of ridiculous that I had so many honorable mentions. I mean, despite the fact that 1983, I think, is a banner year, it was fantastic. And 84 is similar. 84 is also a fantastic year, at least in my book. Especially based on my age and and all that. I mean, I was getting into all this stuff when I was a kid. So I apologize to the editor ahead of time. I'm still gonna have a big batch, although I don't think it's quite as big as 83 was, but a big batch of honorable mentions because you, the viewer, you love this stuff. We want to talk records, so let's do it. Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. It's time for 1984. Awesome year, and in my view, just a great year. So before we get to all this great music and count down my top 10 albums of 1984, let's talk about what else is going on in the world in 84. Well, Ronald Reagan wins re-election in a landslide against Walter Mondale. Terms of Endearment wins Best Picture that year at the Academy Awards. Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi is assassinated. The very first Apple Macintosh goes on sale. 1984 Summer Olympics are held in Los Angeles. Notable because the Soviet Union boycotts, does not participate. If I remember right, they were boycotting, or they were responding to our boycott of the Winter Olympics. I don't remember. Petty. Uh, the Ethiopian famine really begins in 84 and starts gaining a lot of this national attention. And Band Aid bravely responds with their single, Do They Know It's Christmas, to raise money and awareness. Uh, this would be a chance for me to plug real quick an episode that we put out a long time ago, probably before a lot of you guys were subscribed. It's one of my favorites because it's a lot of fun. Where we do this competition, we pit Band-Aids, Do They Know It's Christmas, and USA for Africa's We Are the World against each other, and definitively determine which is the best charity single. Anyway, it's kind of a fun video. Go find it. We have it. And, all right. Enough of that, though. Let's get into this. So I'm going to give you my top 10, and then after that, I can show you kind of rapid fire a bunch of honorable mentions for show you why this year was so great. In my 10 slot, this is an album I often find myself, sometimes defending. I think it's like a genuinely great pop rock record. I mean, part of why I have to defend it so much is a lot of this guy's stuff that he put out after this kind of crap. Yeah, I mean, at least a lot of kind of sappy ballads that made him a lot of money. But I don't know. He never really rocked like this again, at least as far as I could tell. Talking about Brian Adams, Reckless. This is like, no kidding, in a packed year, as you'll see, just a great rock pop record. I mean, the singles on here: One Night Love Affair, She's Only Happy When She's Dancing, Run to You, Heaven, Somebody. That's the first side. I think all those were released. Or maybe She's Only Happy When She's Dancing wasn't released. But anyway, it sounds like could be a single. And then side two, Summer of '69, and then just that killer duet he did with Tina Turner, It's Only Love. All that stuff is on here. This is such a great rock record. I will defend this for hours. If if you disagree, I don't know. I think this is a great record. Seriously, revisit it. If you're open to kind of just got great radio rock from the '80s, I don't think it gets much better than this. Unfortunately, he never like came close to matching that again in my view, but it is. Number 9. Some of you guys might be a little surprised that number 9 is as low as it is, knowing that how much I do love Bruce Springsteen. But yeah, I do have Born in the USA here at number 9. I mean, obviously his biggest record, yeah, by a long shot as far as sales go and hit singles. What was it? The 8? Let's see, Born in the USA, Cover Me, I'm on Fire, I'm Going Down, Glory Days, Dancing in the Dark, My Hometown. All of those were singles off of this. That was at one. I should have been counting as I went. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 singles off of this thing. It's a lot. And then, a lot of the, and actually my favorite song on here isn't even one of the singles. It's Downbound Train. I love Downbound Train. It's so kind of dark, and that guitar riff, man, so good. Yeah. I mean, why isn't this higher? I don't know. I mean, this is the record that got me into Springsteen. I mean, again, based on my age, when I kind of really discovered him, and then went back and discovered everything else. But this was my gateway, my entry, like it probably was for a lot of people. I mean, this was huge. Um, why is it not higher? Well, one, this is a real strong year. I just got great records ahead of it. But two, it, listening to it now, it's maybe one of his more dated sounding records. Definitely kind of hear the times. But yeah, no, I mean, just a killer. And he was going for the commercial juggernaut, and he got it. I saw him on this tour, and it was just massive. So good. All right, number 8. Now, number eight's really interesting. Just it's just coincidental because, well, it's Talking Heads Stop Making Sense, the live album slash soundtrack to the film. It's a concert film, which is amazing. Yeah, I have it on DVD. But this is the soundtrack, and this was my gateway into the Talking Heads. I first kind of got into them through this, and then again I've gone back and rediscovered everything and love Talking Heads. In fact, I'm feeling Talking Heads. I'm feeling like maybe that might be an artist we'll rank sometime soon. But yeah, I love this. The reason I kind of mentioned that it's just sort of coincidence that we're talking about it now is this just came out. This deluxe edition of Stop Making Sense, and it's the whole show. It's a double album. It's the whole concert. Now on CD they released this like special deluxe edition. This is even more special deluxe because this has actually 2 tracks on it that weren't even on that CD version of the special. And from all the, and it comes with the great booklet in here with actually all new essays from all the members of the band, kind of reminiscing about putting this show together and this movie and everything. Um, put it back in there later. But yeah, so this has the entire show, and it just sounds phenomenal. So I don't know. Part of why is kind of listening to this just got me all excited about it again, and kind of in a Talking Heads mood. But yeah, just I love the Psycho Killer on there. To me, it's the definitive version by a long shot of Once in a Lifetime. Much better than the studio version in my view. I love Stop Making Sense. I mean, the movie, soundtrack. I like the short one and I like the long one because the original release kind of has its own charm, its own sort of real tight vibe to it. But I also like the extended version here in the whole show because there's a lot of thought put into how that you know show progressed, that set list. Anyway, it's great stuff. Number 7. I think this is the best. Some of you probably disagree with me, but I think this is the best album by this band. I love this record. The Pretenders, Learning to Crawl. I think it's Chrissie Hynde at her best. And I mean, just the first 2 songs, Middle of the Road and Back on the Chain Gang, are just 2 of the great pop rock songs. Emphasis on rock, especially on Middle of the Road rocks. But God, those are so catchy at the same time. Whole thing though, man, My City Was Gone. That's that great bass groove on there. I think Thin Line Between Love and Hate was a cover, but beautiful song. 2,000 Miles is gorgeous. Just to me, this I know people are like huge fans of those first 2 records of the Pretenders. I love them too. They're great. But for me, this is my favorite Pretentious record. I think where they still maintain some of that edge, but also just just great songcraft on there. Number 6, I think I've mentioned this record before, but Dire Straits' Alchemy live album, double live album. This wasn't my first Dire Straits record, but it was the record that made me like really fall in love with Dire Straits. And we've done a whole Dire Straits episode way back, ranking the records, talking about them. So go watch that if you want to hear more on Dire Straits. But I've mentioned this before, but Dire Straits live versus Dire Straits in the studio is a pretty dramatic difference. They really expand and extend songs, in the live setting. Like I've mentioned, studio version of Once Upon a Time in the West, which is great. It's like 5 minutes, 14 minutes on here. And as far as I'm concerned, the more Mark Knopfler playing guitar, the better. And so, this is one kind of foundational record for me. Man, love this record. And it's the record. It came out right before Brothers in Arms is coming soon. And so it's a great kind of summation of Dire Straits sort of pre-Brothers in Arms, because they kind of shifted in sound a little bit with Brothers in Arms. Number 5, another band that we have done an episode on ranking, like again a while back, a long time ago. One of my all-time favorite bands. I love The Cars, and here we have their commercial juggernaut, Heartbeat City. Clearly their most 80s sounding record, but man, when you've got songs, such catchy songs on here. Hello Again, Magic. God, I love Magic. Drive, huge hit. You Might Think. And my favorite song on here is the title track. I love that, just that mood that's created in Heartbeat City, that song. I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely 80s. It's got that 80s sound to it, but man, Rico Ocasek. I know it's Rico Ocasek. I always say Rico Ocasek. The his songwriting, it's just, I mean, you can't beat that. So anyway, yeah, Heartbeat City, produced by Mutt Lange. It sounds like it. It's got that glistening production, but it works with these songs. So good. Love The Cars. Here's another band that we did an episode on a long time ago. So, like I said, you new subscribers, you can go back and explore all this great material on Amity Tracks. Got Van Halen's 1984. This again, kind of their commercial peak, I think. Although their first record was Sammy Hagar, right? 5150 also was huge. So I'm not sure which one sold more, but this was huge. This was huge. I remember I used to think this album cover was so scandalous when I was a kid. It's like, anyway. Yeah, Eddie Van Halen embraces the synthesizer, and it pays off commercially, obviously with Jump. But there's some other great uses of it on here. Was it I'll Wait? It's a great song. But then, they still rock. Hot for Teacher, Panama, which I know everyone's heard a billion times, but I can still hear it again and just love it. I think that's one of the great rock songs of the 80s. I love Panama. Yeah. I mean, they really kind of hit their first batch of albums are all awesome. And then, of course, as you know, Diamond David Lee Roth departs with visions of grandeur, thinking he was going to be a huge solo star and movie star and everything. Didn't quite pan out for him. But there you go. 1984 still stands. All right, top 3 here. This is one, I think I featured this on one of my cult album, I think. Forgetting what I've featured. I have it all written down. Like, I keep track so I don't repeat myself, but I haven't looked at it. So looked at my list in a while. But I think I've featured this on a cult albums release. This may be the one that most of you are least familiar with, I'm guessing, out of this top 10. The rest of these were pretty huge. But I think it's a phenomenal, obviously. I have it at number 3. I think it's a phenomenal record. And by an artist that I think is really underrated. a lot of people kind of view him as sort of a synth pop one hit wonder in some ways. But now this dude's super talented. Thomas Dolby, The Flat Earth. I have it number three. Most of you guys know, She Blinded Me with Science, which actually is a kind of fun, almost novelty song from the '80s. It's not even on here though. It's on his previous. It's on his debut, which was before this, which is also really good actually. Uh, but now this is his second record, and there is just something really unique and special about this record. He has great instrumentation. Yeah, there's some synths on there and some of that, but that's kind of pulled back a little bit. A lot of it is I forget the guy's name who's playing bass. Matthew Seligman, some fantastic bass work on this. Um, yeah, just to me, really great batch of songs. That first side, especially Dissidents, The Flat Earth, and Screen Kiss, are all just top notch songs, just great songs. Second side, there's White City's all right. Mulu the Rainforest is the real outlier on here, is in not great. But then he brings it all back again with the last two songs. I Scare Myself, which I think is a Dan Hicks cover, great cover. And then Hyperactive, which is sort of the She Blinded Me with Science. It was the hit off of here and kind of the novelty type track. But I think it's kind of really creative and cool. I think it's a good song. I really like Hyperactive. But taken as a whole, especially the first side's like perfect. Because it's kind of moody. I use that word a lot, but it creates this really cohesive, unique mood to it. And God, that title track, it's probably my favorite song on here is the title track, like 7 something minutes, The Flat Earth. It's just, God, when it gets going on that groove, it's so great. Check this out if you have overlooked Thomas Dolby's The Flat Earth. All right, but my number two and number one were huge this year, so that, you're probably going to be familiar with these two. My number two, if I were trying to be real objective about it, should be number one. I mean, it should be, I think, the greatest accomplishment of this year. It's a perfect album. It's perfect. I just happen to really, really love my number one a little bit more, but and number one was huge too. But my number two, I do have Prince and the Revolution, Purple Rain. Soundtrack. I always forget this is a soundtrack, but yeah, soundtrack to the film. I always just think of it as just a great Prince record, but yeah, it is soundtrack technically. I mean, what do you say? It's perfect. This is a perfect record. Every track. The title track is just stupendous. It's just monster. One of the great power ballads I think ever, really. God, and that guitar solo he plays on that song. Everything on here. I mean, do I need to explain Purple Rain? Probably not. Okay. But my number one for 1984 was also huge, and I love it. And again, going back to my word I like to use, moody. This really does create kind of this real cohesive mood, and it's this was a kind of a real turn in sound, a change in sound, change in direction for this band, because everything leading up to this had been a lot more kind of straightforward, rock and roll, and this well, they bring in Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois to produce, so you can guess some of the sound textures you're going to hear on there. But yeah, I'm talking about U2, The Unforgettable Fire. I, I'm a U2 defender. I know there's a lot of U2 hate out there, but I'm a U2 defender, at least their heyday. Um, yeah, I adore this record. I mean, it's like I said, it's ethereal. It's got real consistent mood to it. Um, Dreamy, but it's like this sort of there's kind of a little bit of dark in there, but it's also kind of real comfortable. I don't know. I mean, the big song on here actually kind of stands out. Doesn't sound like a lot of the rest of the record. Pride in the Name of Love, which has been so overplayed. Never need to hear it again. It's a good song, but it's just sick of it, right? That was the big hit off of here, but honestly, the rest of it I like more or whatever. I mean, and the rest of it sounds different than that song. That is kind of the most rocking song on here. Um, Sort of Homecoming. Such a unique sound to that. There's textures on there, opening with that. The title track is a great kind of forgotten, great U2 song. Bad, of course. Now, the live Bad off of this EP that came out the next year, I think is the definitive Bad, but it's great on here too. Yeah, I even like Elvis Presley in America, which is kind of cool. MLK, yeah, and then they even they Promenade and Fourth of July, some very Brian Eno-ish instrumentals. I love it, love it. I'm At some point I'm going to gather the courage and the the stamina to put together you know U2 ranking and get out there and defend this band. But I think this is fantastic. Now, this came out the next year, but I want to show it because it's kind of a companion piece, right? This was an EP with a couple of B-sides from the sessions, which I love too. Um, Three Sunrises and Love Comes Tumbling, and then just amazing live versions of sort of Homecoming and Bad on here. They also released this kind of maxi single with some other B-sides from these sessions that I also love. Bass Trap is on there. Yeah, anyway, I just love everything on these sessions and love this record. All right, so here we go. Real quick, editor can throw a couple up there that I know I have on CD. Actually, I just couldn't find the CDs. You got to mention This Is Spinal Tap, the soundtrack. None More Black. Uh, and Los Lobos, How Will the Wolf Survive? Kind of their first record that kind of hit the mainstream. I'm a big Los Lobos fan, and we'll in coming years when we're continue with rankings, you'll see some Los Lobos. But this was it's not their first record, but it's their first record that had some kind of wider national success. So it's good, real solid. Well, I guess while we're on CDs here, Stevie Ray Vaughan's second record, Couldn't Stand the Weather, I think is fantastic. Scuttle Button just comes bursting out of the gate and shows you this guy can play guitar. Um, but like stuff like Cold Shot and Couldn't Stand the Weather, I think are some of his best examples of kind of this hybrid of rock and roll and blues. It's not just blues, but it's very bluesy rock, and I think it's so great. REM's Reckoning is fantastic. Yeah, the just, Don't Go Back to Rockville's on there. South Central Rain, Pretty Persuasion. God, so good. Psychedelic Furs, Mirror Moves, continuing with their great streak, although I think it's soon to come to an end. I mean, yeah, you got to mention Madonna's Like a Virgin. That was massive. And actually, listened to this recently. It's really good. It's really good pop music. I mean, yeah, I like it. Like, seriously. Very different than Like a Virgin would be Midnight Oil's Red Sails and Sunset in the Sunset. Um, I am a recent convert to Midnight Oil, but I've kind of dove in deep and really love a lot of their stuff. So you'll see some Midnight Oil coming up on some future years. Let's see. Go back to the vinyl here. Like I said, rapid fire. Here we go. Gotta mention my guys, King Crimson, the third in that '80s trilogy, which I love. '80s King Crimson. Um, God, this has Sleepless. Listen to Tony Levin's bass on Sleepless. My God, so awesome. Yeah, I really like this record. I love all three of those '80s King Crimson records. That perfect combination of still King Crimson experimentation, but trying to kind of dial in a little bit into that sort of new wave sound. I think it's a great combination. A Talking Heads influence, actually. Yeah, great. The Replacements, Let It Be. Unsatisfied is just an amazing song. And I love their cover of Black Diamond by Kiss. It's a killer cover. It's awesome. Michael Hedges, one of the great guitar innovators of the last 30 years or so, sadly no longer with us, died in a car accident. But Amazing stuff. This is one of his early records. And I mean, you just got to listen to it. He reinvents playing guitar, and it's astounding. Another amazing musician, Bela Fleck, I've kind of mentioned recently at times. This is featuring a band he was in earlier, the Newgrass Revival, so it's before the whole Flecktones thing, but just really innovative. Banjo player, but this banjo virtuoso, but it ain't your daddy's or your grandpa's bluegrass. I mean, real innovative, almost jazz and exploration. And this is a great record, Deviation. Van Morrison put out a killer live album in 1984, live at the Grand Opera House, Belfast. I'm a huge fan of 80s Van Morrison. I think he's almost like 80s Neil Young. He really kind of did some unique records in the 80s. It'll be an interesting, video on its own, just Van Morrison in the 80s. But this is a great, I guess, representation of his 80s stuff. A little more spiritual, really exploring a lot of his faith and stuff. Really good stuff. Hey, Hall and Oates put out Big Bam Boom. I think side one of this is perfect. Out of Touch, Method of Modern Love, Some Things Are Better Left Unsaid. I mean, it's perfect. Side two is a little bit of a dip, but man, really great. I like Hall and Oates. You guys know I'm a huge fan of the Kinks on Arista Records. This was their final record in that Arista period, word of mouth, and not the best in that run, but has two, to me, really standout songs. Do It Again. I think that was probably the first song that really pulled me into the Kinks. That I've mentioned before, I kind of discovered them during this period, and then only later figured out that they have this long, great history. Do It Again, I think, is a great rock song. And then Living on a Thin Line, that Dave Davis song, is so good. That's one of the best songs of this whole era. You guys remember this? This was huge. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. So excessive, double album, their debut, I think. Anyway, this was massive. Remember Relax and all that? They do a cover of Springsteen's Born to Run on here. Go listen to this. This is like super creative. It's really good. All right, real quick. NXS The Swing. Big fan of NXS. Kind of been rediscovering them lately. And this is one of their best records. It's awesome. Got Original Sin on there. And yeah, really, they're getting a little more experimental. Kind of expanding their sound a bit on here. The days when you could find great used records, $1.98 on this one. Don't find those prices anymore. Tina Turner had a huge, massive comeback with Private Dancer, of course. Love the back cover. Oh man. What's Love Got to Do with It? Better Be Good to Me. Private Dancer, written by Mark Knopfler. Gosh, really a great record. And I always put those Mad Max songs she did for the Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome film kind of with this era, although they're not on here. But actually, if you buy this, I bought the expanded version on CD, and they're on like the second disc of extras, all the Mad Max stuff. So, we don't need another hero and all that. The Smiths, Hatful of Hollow. This is one of their mini comps, right? It's hard to keep track, but yeah, it's got killer Smith songs on there. And last, but certainly not least, gotta give a shout out to Weird Al Yankovic in 3D. I think this was his biggest hit. It really does. Take a lot of talent. They're actually a great band, great musician. Takes a lot of talent to do great parody, and this, of course, had "Eat It." I always like the Brady Bunch. I Lost on Jeopardy. King of Suede. The Police's King of Pain. And his original Nature Trail to Hell. I always enjoy. I dig Weird Al. I do. All right, guys. 1984. Let's talk 84 in the comments. What did I miss? I miss anything? What do you like? You got ranking for 84? Let's see it. Let's talk 84. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, like the videos, all of that. We'll see you next time on Amity Tracks.